What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. As you can see, got our transmission. Before we get out there and start doing some work on it, I just want to talk to you guys about this transmission and why I chose this transmission. Because like I've said in other videos, I want to try to get as much information out there as possible. So anybody that wants to do this build, or anybody that's actively doing this build, they can get as much information out of me as I can provide. So you're not running around trying to do all this research and trial and error like I'm doing, wasting a lot of money. So this transmission, I got it from Chicago JDM. This is not a promotional thing, or no sponsorship or nothing. They didn't ask me to give them a shout out or anything. They don't even know I got a YouTube channel. But there's a lot of bad companies out there. So when I find a good company, I like to let people know. And so I got this transmission from Chicago JDM. Talked to James over there. Really nice guy. Answered all of my questions. So I bought the transmission. It was shipped out that next morning. And within a week, I had it. No issues. I mean, it looks great. It looks like they must have cleaned it, because there's no like grease and grime and dirt all over it like normal on a transmission. And they're really good to work with. No issues. So if you're looking for anything JDM, like engines, transmissions, transfer cases, they got half cuts, whatever, check out Chicago JDM. They might have what you need. Just putting that out there, let you know I had a really good experience with them. So this transmission is an Evo 5 transmission. Now a lot of people were like, oh, you gotta use the Evo 4, you gotta use 5, you gotta use 6. 5 and 6 are the same, but I want to tell you why I chose the 5. Well, 5 and 6 are the same. So why I chose a 5 or 6, this one's a 5. So when I was looking at transmissions, you need to have Evo 4 through 9. Transmission is the only transmissions that will bolt up to this engine. Now, the issue lies in the axles, like I said in the last video. The only axles that will work with the DSM hubs is 4 through 6. So that limits you down to the 4 through 6. Now, why I'm choosing the 5 and 6 is from the research I found that the 4 doesn't quite match up. It bolts up. It'll bolt up to 4 through 6 transfer case. Axles will go just fine. But the 4 transfer case is the issue that I've discovered. You need to have a 5 and 6 transfer case. Now, I looked up the 2G DSM manual transmission gear ratios. I looked up the Evo's 4 through 9 transmission gear ratios. Nothing was the same. Everything completely different. Every Evo and the DSM all completely different. So then I looked at the rear diff, and that's where I found similarities. Now, the 2G DSM automatic rear diff is a 3.307. All right. The 2G DSM manual rear diff is a 3.545. So a lot different. Now, this is why you can't use, well, you could probably use it, but you probably shouldn't use the Evo 4 transfer case, because the Evo 4 rear diff is a 3.323. Now it's close to the 2G DSM automatic rear diff, so you could probably use it, but it's like I'd rather be sure it works than just probably, So then you go with the 5, actually it's 5 all the way through 9, have a rear diff gear ratio of 3.307. Exactly the same as the 2G DSM automatic rear diff. So I couldn't find any specs on any of the transfer cases. I looked everywhere, I can't find it. But, it's all-wheel drive, so the front and rear wheels need to be moving at the same speed, same rotation. So if the DSM rear diff is a 3.307 and the 5 through 9 Evo rear diff is a 3.307. That would lead me to believe that the transfer case 5 through 9 would be a 3.307, right? Yeah. So really you can use 4 through 9 transmission. The 5.6 is the transfer case that matches up exactly with the DSM rear diff, the 2G DSM automatic rear diff. But 7 through 9, the axles won't work. So you're limited down to the 5.6 transfer case. Now, what I would like to know, I don't think it fits, but I would like to know if anybody out there knows for sure, like you've tried it, if the 5.6 transfer case works with 7 through 9 transmission. I know they'll bolt up, but as far as the transfer case, front output shafts that connect to the axles, will those work with the 7 through 9 transmission? I really don't think they do, but these transmissions are expensive. I'm not just going to go buy a 7 through 9 transmission just for test fitting. So, but if I don't have the transfer case right now, but when I get the 5 or 6 transfer case, if anybody around the Sacramento area has a 7 through 9 transmission, and you're curious, you'd like to see, let me bolt up the transfer case to it, so we can know for sure if it'll work or not, let me know, because I'd really like to know, because I would actually prefer to have the Evo 8 transmission in there, but I would need to know for sure before going and buying that transmission. So anyway, that's how I decided to go with the 5 transmission, 5.6 they're saying, instead of the 4 or anything else. So got the transmission, let's get out there and let's get to work on it. Alright, let's talk about the mounts here. So I went ahead and I ordered the Evo 8 engine mount and the Evo 8 transmission mount. These are OEM mounts out of a crashed car. And right when I opened this one up, I knew immediately it was not going to work, and I'll show you why. Here's where the mount goes onto the side of the engine here, and obviously it fits because it's for the Evo engine. But if you look, I don't know how I'm going to get this. See, the mount is flush with the side of the engine part here, but if you look straight down, all the pulleys stick out maybe about a ½ inch farther than that. See that? So now let's go into the car. So the mount fits in just perfectly like it's supposed to, but you see, let's make sure the holes lined up there. You see where the edge is? The edge of that mount is already in the frame rail, and the pulleys are about a ½ inch farther. So the pulleys are like this far into the frame rail, so this mount will not work. But we have a couple options here. This is the engine side motor mount from the DSM 420A. This is the mount that came out of this car. This is the DSM 4G63 mount. Now, you look at them, they're obviously different than the Evo one. So if we go over here, take a look here. Let me flip this over. See, those 2 bolts will fit into the holes, but that one will need to be cut off. And that's going to be the same with either of these mounts. We'll have to cut that middle bolt out to use either of these. Now it should be the 420A one that we're going to use, but I've got the 4G63 one out here just because I was looking at them. And if you see down the center of each mount, the 4G63 is over a little farther than the 420A. So I figured between these 2 mounts, we can move the engine forward or back however much we need to get it right where we want it. So now let's talk about the transmission mount. So this is a factory Evo 8 transmission mount, and as you see, it fits, if I can line it up, fits on the Evo 5 transmission just fine. And then what I got here this is actually the transmission mount out of a 3G6G72 Eclipse. It's actually out of that one. But it also fits on there just fine. Now the reason that I've got these out, I actually just pulled this out just to look at it. I was just pulling out all the engine mounts that I had to see what will work, but I found these kind of interesting because if you take the Evo one, stick it on here, and you look at where this bolt hole is, we'll say it's kind of underneath that bolt right there. And well, this 3G Eclipse one's kind of jacked up, but let me see. I'll hold that up where it's supposed to be. And you see the center of that hole is actually right above that bolt. So I figure between these two mounts we can raise and lower the transmission to where we need. So I'm talking between these two and these two, we should be able to move the engine and transmission up, down, left, right, wherever we need to get everything nice and straight and level and perfect. So one thing we have to do in here is move that transmission bracket. It should have to slide up a little bit, but either way I know it has to move either forward or back. We'll figure it out when we get the transmission in here. So I'm just going to go ahead, take that out. It's just the spot welds. This little tab here, probably take both of them off. Those are for the battery tray, so we'll take those little tabs off too, and then that'll be all clear. So once we get the transmission in here, we can just bolt that bracket up to the transmission mount, get everything straightened up, and that'll tell us exactly where that bracket needs to be. Alright, for this bracket it looks like we've got 4 spot welds in here. Over here we got 1 spot weld on this bracket, the bead of weld there, or you can do these 2 spot welds here and that'll take it off of this bracket, but it just seems like this would be a lot easier. Underneath the bottom here we got a few little beads of weld there, and then on the top looks like a few more beads of weld right there, and that should be it. So have a little fun grinding all that junk out. Alright, we got those taken off. Now I'm going to just go ahead and grind everything down nice and smooth. Alright, we got it grinded down all nice and smooth. Coat a primer on there just so we don't get any rusty in the meantime. I'll go back later and fill in all these little holes and divots and stuff with some body filler, get it all nice and smooth, because I gotta fix all these rusty crusty spots as well, and we'll do all that when it comes time to paint this engine bay. But I was just inside editing up this video a little bit while I waited for this camera battery to charge, and I realized this video is getting pretty long, and everything I gotta do now is gonna take a lot of time, and I don't want to make this video extremely long, because next is putting the engine in. I gotta bolt up this transmission. I'm gonna take this stuff off the front. We don't really need that for test fitting. Leave the intake manifold on to make sure we don't go too far back, and then get it up in here, figure out our location for this bracket, weld that up, and then it'll be in there. So I think I'll cut it here and I'll put all that stuff in the next video. And so by the end of the next video, the engine transmission should be sitting in here by itself. So if you want to check out that video, you can hit that link up here. Check out the previous video, you can hit that link up here. And if you're enjoying the build, hopefully hit that subscribe down here. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you on the next one.